Okay, good morning. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of council, Tuesday, June 9th, 2026 at 9 o'clock in the morning. In calling the meeting to order, I recognize that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, more specifically in Gespewick. We all have responsibilities and rights as treaty people, members to the treaty. I will note, Madam Clerk, that I've received regrets from Councillor Roy for today's meeting and that Councillor Carver is absent at the time of calling the meeting to order. Approval of the agenda. Folks, any additions to the agenda as circulated? Any changes to the agenda that you'd like to see? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda as circulated. Moved by Councillor Jenkins, seconded by Councillor Fancy. All those in favor? Call it approved. Adoption of the minutes from the regular council meeting which took place May 26th. Any changes? Anything from the minutes? The previous meeting of council? Okay, moved by Deputy Mayor Charlton to adopt the minutes. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Wenzel. All those in favor? Call them adopted. Okay, that brings us to the public comments section of the meeting. Of course, we always appreciate constructive comments from members of the community. Is there anybody who would like to speak to council this morning? Come on up. Joel, I know you know the deal. Please state your name and your where you reside, and limit your comments to 5 minutes. Direct your comments to me as the chair of the meeting.
Joel Zwicker, live at 54 College Street here in Liverpool, and I do want to show up today to share some one part advocacy and one part PSA for those residents of College Street. So appreciate Deputy Mayor bringing this to the table. I think it was in January. Appreciate the work that was been done by Director Grant and the team to bring options. It's not very often you see a staff report with 8 options. It's not going to be ideal for the residents of College Street. That's okay. Sometimes in life we all have to do things that aren't ideal, aren't perfect, aren't the way we want it for the betterment of all. And so advocating for College Street to become a one-way street, even if it is in the short term until 28, 29, is truly the best option. I can appreciate that it adds 13 seconds of drive time to get to town for whatever reason. I will also acknowledge that it impacts me the least. I'm at the top of what would become a one-way. So for me, it's a quick right turn. And I'll also admit that I'll be the first one that will get a ticket for going the wrong way. After 16 years of driving the wrong direction, that's going to happen. So with that said, I would encourage the idea of a one-way street is the safest way as the population continues to grow in that area. As we know, the Cobbs Ridge Apartments just recently opened another building, which is great. That's more people, but with more people comes more traffic, more foot traffic. Of course, with the daycare at the top of the street, the high school, there's always more foot traffic, which is great. But there needs to be a safe way for people to get up and down there. So once again, residents of College Street, come across, have a chat, yell at me if you want. That's okay. But I think we all need to take one for the team here and just do what's safe for everyone. That's it. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Zwicker. Anybody else like to address council this morning? Ask one more time. Any other comments from public? Come on up. Any of the microphones that suit you best, hit the button at the base. It will turn red. This will turn red as well. State your name and the community. Oh, sorry, the gray button at the base of the microphone. So yeah, yeah, there you go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ali Druzina. I am at 39 College Street, so I'm one of Joel's neighbors. And I'm just here to kind of echo, the need for some more safety measures on College Street. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and Joel also has, young kids. We all want to be able to use, our street the way that is intended, and as well as our our neighbors. And with the increasing foot traffic, the senior elderly population using that street up and down, as well as the young families going towards schools, between the middle school, the high school, and the daycare, and now we have increased development as well. There needs to be measures in place to keep our community safe. And as an established neighborhood, I think it's well deserving of its time to have some safety measures put in place. So I would like to support Joel's efforts, and I'm happy to speak any more on it. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Ms. Drzina. It's nice to have a Drzina in the gallery again. Tell your mom she can come back anytime. Okay. Deborah, do you mind hitting the button on that microphone? Would anybody else like to address council this morning? Okay, well, I'll conclude public comments and thank both of you for your comments this morning. So next item on the agenda is a presentation from the Be the Peace Institute on gender-based violence. Very important topic. I appreciate the opportunity to hear this morning, so take it away as you're ready.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to put this down so I can see everybody. It's a nice feature. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Sue Bookchin, Executive Director of Be the Peace Institute, and I'd like to talk to you about gender-based violence and the role of municipal councils in preventing and addressing that in better ways than we have in the past. We started as a project of Second Story Women's Center, which some of you may have heard about. They're in Lunenburg County, as are we. And in 2015, we incorporated as an independent organization, so we are now in our 10th year. We work to address the roots and extreme consequences of gender-based violence, trying to advance systemic change for gender equity and social justice. We do that through projects and research and partnerships. We do not provide direct services like Second Story and Harbor House do. You can see all our projects on our website. When we speak about the roots of gender-based violence, they are in these patterns that have been thousands of years in the making. Patriarchy, misogyny, oppression of women, white supremacy, colonialism, ableism, trans and homophobia. This is in our history, in our culture, and in our social narrative. So I have no illusion that we're going to fix this problem in my lifetime, but maybe in the lifetimes of some of you. And also just to be mindful, we're talking about a difficult topic. We assume in any group of people that some people have lived experience of this, and so it can be triggering or emotionally upsetting, and so we just encourage you all to do whatever you need to do to take care of yourselves as we talk further. And just to clarify some terms, so we use the term gender-based violence as an umbrella term that means any harmful act directed at a person because of their gender, gender identity, or gender expression. It can be physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, financial, spiritual, and includes threats and coercion, surveillance, and deprivation of liberty, which are some of the most serious kinds of gender-based violence. Most people would be more familiar with the terms domestic violence or intimate partner violence, family violence, sexualized violence, and sexual harassment. Most recently, and very much a concern, is tech-facilitated violence and harassment that is happening everywhere with young people, older people, in workplaces. It's a real concern, and there is a bill being considered right now about how to start to prevent that. And also the term coercive control, which also has a bill in front of the Senate right now about adding that to the criminal code. Because coercive control is a pattern of behaviors that are meant to dominate, control, isolate, or create fear in a partner so that a victim lives in constant anxiety, constant hypervigilance, including self-blame. And these are the most lethal kinds of violence, but they're very much invisible unless you are paying attention to the warning signs, and actually very hard to prosecute because it's a pattern of behaviors, not just one incident. I'm sorry I'm going through this very quickly because we have limited time, but if people want more information, we're happy to bring that. So Nova Scotia has among the highest rates in the country of police-reported intimate partner violence and human trafficking and exploitation. In 2024, the province declared intimate partner violence an epidemic, and within the year following that, there were 11 domestic homicides, including one in my neighborhood in Mahone Bay. The rates in rural and remote areas can be 75% higher than in urban areas, which is often ignored because there are many more barriers to receiving access to services and supports in rural areas, as you know. Most of these crimes also are not reported to the police. Probably 80% are not reported for really good reasons. The justice system, the policing system, often causes more harm to people who report into these systems. And also there are the fears and the threats and the stereotypes and myths that still are alive and well in all our systems about who this happens to. Most affected are women and girls and gender diverse people. They are most often targeted and most often by males. So most of the violence committed in the world is committed by males, but it's important to say that most men are not violent. Most men are not violent. Indigenous, Black, newcomer, elder, and very young women and women living with disabilities are most at risk and disproportionately affected, up to 12 times more likely, particularly for Indigenous women, to go missing or be murdered. And so it's a very serious issue. So what can municipalities do? That's the question for you. In the Mass Casualty Commission report, which was the report of the killings that started in Port-au-Pic in 2020, the link between mass casualty events and gender-based violence or family violence are directly correlated. Most mass casualty events start with an attack on a family member or a partner, and for most of the people who commit these crimes, almost exclusively male, there is family violence or intimate partner violence in their histories. So there are warning signs that can lead to much bigger public safety issues. Epidemic declarations, so Modal has declared intimate partner violence an epidemic. Not many other municipalities in Nova Scotia have, as far as we know. Over 90 municipalities in Ontario have declared it an epidemic. And so that is the recommendation in the mass casualty report, is declare it an epidemic and then create funding that is commensurate with the issue. That has not happened yet. They also talk about the need for a whole of society response, meaning it's not the responsibility of the police to solve or prevent gender-based violence. It requires all of us. It's a huge public safety and public health issue and threat to all of us. And also that the risks of gender-based violence are related to social determinants of health, which you may be familiar with: poverty, housing insecurity, food insecurity, lack of access to services, lack of public transportation, social isolation, education, healthcare services are all directly correlated with gender-based violence. If you are vulnerable in one area, you are more at risk to experiencing gender-based violence. And if you experience gender-based violence, you are more at risk for vulnerabilities in all those other areas. Rural areas have unique needs and high rates of gender-based violence, also high rates of gun ownership, isolation, no public transportation. So as you know, you're obviously familiar with all of that. And so municipalities are really well positioned as the closest government to community. You see your constituents in the grocery store and at the post office. And so you are trusted people and local leaders. So there's a big role to play. And so some priority areas for you is you could declare gender-based violence an epidemic and prioritize meaningful action. So these declarations can be performative. We do a declaration and then that's all we do. That's not what we would suggest. We would suggest that you have a strategy and actions that are related to that. You could assign staff to look at the recommendations, particularly about gender-based violence in the Mass Casualty Commission report. Even the executive summary is very helpful. And to take a regional approach, because we know that neighborhoods cross municipal boundaries as well, and you can influence other municipal units. We have spoken to some people at the Union of Nova Scotia Municipalities. There has been some interest, but no particular action. The other thing you could learn about is a GBA plus lens. So this is a gender-based intersectional analysis. That's what that speaks about. So that any policies that you make, whether they're about education, about housing, about the environment, about climate mitigation, that you put a gender lens to it, because those policies affect women and gender diverse people differently than they affect kind of the population as a whole. And so the intersectional part is that people have many different identities and social factors, and the more of those marginalized identities people have, the more vulnerable they are to gender-based violence and the influences of policies and programs and planning. There is training on the Women and Gender Equality Canada website that you can do online at your own pace. There's also training that can be done in person through the Nova Scotia Status of Women office. And this lens can be applied, as I said, to anything that you do in any of the areas that are part of your priorities. Economic considerations in rural areas, there are higher rates of poverty. There are a lot of financial barriers to leaving violence. We have a real crisis of affordable housing, affordable and also livable housing, or supported housing. And we need to address income inequalities. And when leaving a relationship because of gender-based violence, that may be a gender-based violence-induced poverty, because mostly it's the males in those situations who have the higher incomes and economic prosperity, and often when you leave, you are descending into a state of poverty. And so you can have a GBA plus of the regional economic development initiatives you have, or in your support for small businesses, many of which are owned by women. You could provide leadership on workplace training and safety, particularly for sexual harassment and sexual violence, which is rampant in workplaces and mostly goes unaddressed. You can have gender-informed workplaces, including the workplace that council is. So we've just co-hosted an event on violence and harassment in politics with partners at the Mount, and the kinds of harassment and violence that comes at women candidates or gender diverse or racially diverse candidates running for public office is extreme, and there are basically no ways to address that. And so it dissuades a lot of people from running for public office, which harms all of us and compromises our democracy. Environment and infrastructure, so gender-based violence risks increase during climate emergencies. Women and children are more vulnerable. Environmental racism increases vulnerabilities, and we know that that is common on the South Shore. Access to safe housing, and I was listening to something the other day, I think it was a municipality in Kings County, talking about having safe housing has had a direct impact even on the number of visits to emergency rooms. And so safe and affordable housing is a critical gender-based violence prevention strategy. You might do other kinds of climate mitigation, environmental protection, and housing strategies, and we know you have people in the room who are working on second stage housing for people who escape violent relationships. We have a real paucity of that along the whole South Shore and actually all over the province, but rurally particularly, are very few places for women to go. And I use the term women, it's not always people who identify as women. One of the really important recommendations from the Mass Casualty Commission is about community safety and well-being leadership councils that municipalities might strike in partnership with communities and other entities in their communities, because public safety is everyone's responsibility, aligned with the whole of society approach, as well as having safe spaces to report violence. There are not that many spaces where people feel like they won't be judged. They'll be unconditionally accepted and believed. This is actually pretty rare for victims of survivors of gender-based violence. Libraries, for instance, I think the Halifax Regional Library has trained people to watch for warning flags and to be supportive people, to direct people to services. And there's a training that has come back to Nova Scotia. It was developed at Western University in London, Ontario, called Neighbours, Friends and Families. And the Transition House Association of Nova Scotia is now training a whole cadre of people to deliver these public presentations so that everybody will know the warning signs. And when we have delivered these, there is always somebody in the room who discloses being, having had violence directed at them, who has never told anybody. Many people never tell anybody in their lives. So it's important to raise that public awareness. Governance, as I mentioned, violence and harassment toward diverse people, women and diverse people in politics, and the underrepresentation of women and diverse people really compromises our decision-making for everybody. And so you can support gender and racial parity in leadership, support diverse people in electoral processes, have mentorship and training, and maybe help for tech-facilitated violence and some skills and mental health supports for people who are facing those kinds of things. You can also have an influence on workplace safety policies and training aligned with relatively new occupational health and safety rules about psychologically safe workplaces. Those rules are in place, but many workplaces don't actually know how to do anything about that. Increasing funding and accessibility supports, and strengthening caregiver supports for people who are in electoral office, particularly if they have children or have caregiving responsibilities for elders, which is usually the women. Other possibilities, transportation. I don't know if you currently have something about Queens County Transit. This has been on the Lunenburg County docket for a long time, and there are some inroads, but isolation is the key thing that keeps gender-based violence persistent. If people are isolated and that's part of the pattern of what's happening for them, and there's no public transportation and you don't have a car and you have to rely on other people, it's very hard to escape those kinds of situations. And a GBA lens on transportation or barriers, particularly for women, gender diverse, racialized people, training for drivers, like truck drivers, to notice the warning signs. There's lots of people hitchhiking, and women are being trafficked all over the country. And if you don't know about Shelter Movers is also across the country a nonprofit that helps women who are escaping move with security. They take them and all their stuff, all with volunteers, to wherever they need to go, whether it's a shelter or another housing situation. So there are some resources available. Policing culture. We rely on our police, and we know that there is more training than there used to be for gender-based violence. It is wholly insufficient. We still hear about police responses that don't believe women, that don't take the reports seriously. They often go back to the same households over and over again, but we're not seeing them refer people to services. There are initiatives that are about crisis response that don't involve the police, or situations where a social worker might go with the police to a domestic violence situation in order to work with the people who are involved and get them into services and supports. So this is not about punishing men, because many men who use violence also have violence and trauma in their histories. Men need help in order to change those behaviors, and policing and justice systems and criminalization actually doesn't help that. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some people who should be in jail potentially forever, but we need other avenues for actually dealing with this than police. And community partnerships and outreach for crime prevention. So you have a police advisory board, you can bring this conversation up with them or ask for a presentation to them. More training is needed. There are still biases and stereotypes and myths that abound among policing people, among prosecutors, among judges, in our legal system. It is a torturous process for the victims who come into the system in that way. And also that these things need to be culturally informed, so that people who are Black, Indigenous, newcomers, whatever, have what they need in order for people to understand their particular realities, which are different than if you are from the dominant white culture here in Nova Scotia. Public awareness and advocacy. Community-based organizations are very much over capacity and underfunded. The demands are huge. Second Story, which is one of the few women's centers that has trauma-specialized counselors and therapists, has a wait list, again, of many people. Harbor House, which is the local shelter that serves both our counties, often has a wait list, and sometimes people have to be sent to Halifax out of their community. Culturally responsive services. Trans women are at the highest risk of violence, and many shelters don't accommodate trans women. So there are many issues about this, but the public awareness and advocacy so that people understand warning signs. We've been part of developing some curriculum outcomes for schools from grade P to 12, where this kind of healthy relationships, violence prevention doesn't exist. But it is extremely difficult for teachers to grapple with teaching this curriculum when they are dealing with just every day boys parroting what they're seeing on social media and the rise of the manosphere. I don't know if any of you have seen the video about Into the Manosphere, what's happening online, recruiting boys and young men into this misogynistic, like unbelievably misogynistic realm where they can find a place of belonging, because belonging is at a premium, and particularly among boys, there's a real epidemic of loneliness, and it pushes people into online circles that can be very damaging and groom them for extremism. It's a serious public health, public safety issue. And just advocating for sustainable funding from your government partners, provincially and federally, so that we can all do more about this. And here's some just local supports. You'll know that none of these are located in Queens County, but they all try to serve Queens County in some way. You need more services that are locally available, and there are provincial resources, and that's the end of that. What I could suggest is that you could consider a motion to formally recognize gender-based violence as an epidemic and a priority community health and safety concern. You could include prevention and education efforts as an essential element in your community wellness strategy, and include support and training for all counselors and all staff. So particularly in your recreation department, they may see or have disclosures, and people need to know how to respond in a trauma-sensitive way to disclosures, and provide education in your community so everybody can be on board. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sue. Great presentation, very informative. Give us lots to think about. Council, any quick questions or comments on the presentation? I think lots to think about. We certainly, I know my colleagues will take this way. Yeah, Councillor Fancy, go ahead.
I was going to wait till last, but nobody was putting hands up quickly. So, anyway, just a few little things. I got so many notes here. This almost shouldn't have been here because it's just too much. It's way overwhelming. But I see from a few different things. Of course, with Lunenburg Municipality has made this a part of their mandate, I guess, for going forward, for having something on the books for training for people and understanding that we need help, that women need help, and how we can help them. So that's what you're looking at here. I see. So we look at the changes we need is training. We need more action because it's you can talk about it all you want, and if nothing happens, then nothing is going forward, and it can be financial too. The other thing too is that coercive control bill that's going through. Is there anything we can do to help with that? Is there anything we can do as a region to be able to send anything in to go forward? Because again, you said 75% is higher in your rural areas, and you can understand that because there isn't as much work, and maybe one person's working, the other person is at home, they're dependent upon the other person, all kinds of little things like that could make it changes to what it is. And then creating a safe place to report violence. Do we try to set up a spot where people will be trained maybe in the library or something, or something where people could be able to say that I can be able to go here and understand that's the spot to be able to report to?
Yeah, I think to the degree that you can train people who are in public places and where public comes regularly to notice those kinds of signs, then people will understand that there are places they can go so that no door is the wrong door. Libraries being one, post offices, recreation centers, all of those places. The more people notice, the more people might be directed to resources. With the coercive control bill, it's very complicated. So the Federal Standing Committee on Justice and the Federal Standing Committee on Status of Women have both had submissions about this bill on coercive control. We were completely in favor of it in the beginning, but what we have learned from people who are way more informed about this than we are is that in places in the world like the UK where they've had it, these situations are very hard to prosecute. And because the myths and stereotypes persist in terms of, well, these are upstanding men. They contribute in their community. They're, a business person. They're with the Lions Club. And so people don't believe that men like that can do this kind of thing. And because it's a pattern that happens over time, that doesn't fit well in our justice system, which is very incident focused. The other thing is men like that are very good at manipulating systems, manipulating people and systems, including the legal system. And so it can be used against the survivors in a court of law where he may be more believed than she will be. So it's hard to prosecute them. It's really important to update the language in our laws so that we know that these things are happening and it gives it validity in our cultural space. But it's very hard in reality without extremely important training for judges and legal personnel to understand what this is and then what the remedies are for it. So looking at some of the submissions to those standing committees on coercive control would really help you be educated about it. And then you could write to our federal justice minister, Sean Fraser, who's Nova Scotian, with those concerns.
Thanks so much, Sue. We're running a little late on time, but I have a couple thoughts stemming from this. I think it would be appropriate for us to refer this discussion, this presentation, some of the content from this onto the Police Advisory Board, as well as the Inclusion Queens Committee for discussion. I think it would be meaningful to hear from both of those groups. And I also, in terms of, and I appreciate some of the action items that you had identified in terms of, and your familiarity with the fact that we are working on a community wellness strategy, and to direct staff to include the lens of gender-based violence and considerations with respect to gender-based violence, specifically within our work around the community wellness strategy. I think would be appropriate if there's a member, if council would like to. I'd welcome that type of emotion at this time. Okay, go ahead.
I'm happy to move that this topic be forwarded to staff for consideration in the community wellness strategy.
Second? Councilor Jenkins, further debate on that?
I would
Speak
just
to it.
say, I think when this council first came in and we did some strategic planning, we did identify gender-based violence, and I think that had been captured as a strategic priority of this council, and then I think we're looking to build that in the community wellness strategy. As a member of the Police Advisory Board, I think it would be appropriate to have this discussion there and with Inclusion Queens. So I think that those would be the right steps forward, so happy to support that.
Anything further? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Perhaps just from a good governance perspective, and so it's tidy in the minutes as well. And Madam Clerk, please note that Councillor Carver is in attendance and voted on that motion. And maybe too, that we could get a motion to refer this presentation to the the Police Advisory Board and Inclusion Queens, and perhaps a recommendation with respect to a declaration of gender-based violence as an epidemic for those committees to moved by Deputy Mayor Charlton, seconded by Councillor Romero. Further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Thanks very much, Sue. Greatly appreciate it.
I'll just also mention that HRM has been doing a lot of work on, they have a whole community safety division. So if staff were looking for some resources, they would be a good source.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. I'm sure we'll be in touch as we move this work forward. Thank you so much for your presentation this morning. Okay, that brings us to staff reports, the first of which is a staff report on College Street pedestrian safety. We have Director Grant to provide an overview of that report this morning. Take it away, Adam, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. So we have before council today staff report with some options for improving pedestrian safety on College Street. This stems from a motion of council back in January. So to recap, we do have a project in 2829, the CIP, which would seek to put in a 1.8 meter wide concrete pedestrian sidewalk on one side of the street. following up on that, we did some research into the matter at hand, looking to identify what the challenge is, which is identified, I guess, mostly due to the lack of street right-of-way first and foremost, but also the lack of the right-of-way width. 10 meters is generally about half of what we're looking for street right-of-ways within the town and county boundaries. As well, the street is less than 6 meters, which is less than the minimal amount that's recommended by TAC. TAC's guideline proposes 3.5 as being the most appropriate general, I guess, urban roadway width. We also have some information from TAC there about the horizontal operating envelope for pedestrians, so recognizing that 0.75 meters for one person or 1.5 to 1.8 for two persons is the typical design guideline for pedestrian safety. We did additional research into there, spoke with some residents in the area to try to understand what the issue is. It's not believed to be related to speed. There is comments about the noise in the area being a challenge, but also that complaints are increasing with the recent increase in use of the area. So seeing expansion with the YMCA in the area, as well as the developments that are being proposed up there. So we kind of workshopped it internally with staff in our department, come up with 9 ideas. Some are just improvements on one another. Maybe just fast forward right down to the table, Steve, with the summary rather than dig through all the details for council. So looking at all 9 options, the first 4 look at the first 2 look at developing that street into a one-way, so reducing traffic in one direction would allow for the pedestrian to open up some pedestrian priority areas, so we would have a pedestrian walkway in the street essentially. Building on that, if council wished, we could look at, providing a gravel shoulder in option 3. Option 3 would be to turn that gravel shoulder into a hard surface, which would, eliminate some of the maintenance concerns. Option 4, looking at just waiting until the CIP comes around in 28-29 to see that project take fruition. And then getting on to some other options, which would be, I think, a challenge to deploy. Option 5 suggests that perhaps we could reverse the flow on the provincial side of it. So on the top end where the cemetery is, that would have to be conversed with the province to see if they're willing to entertain that, but it's not necessarily a solution. It's just an alternative. Speed limit reduction could also provide some additional safety, but where the street is not local, it's unlikely that the provincial authority would approve that order. We could exclusively prohibit pedestrian access on College Street, which is, would certainly improve safety for pedestrians if they're not in the area, perhaps. And then option 8, we would do that anyways, which is to look to the RCMP to increase enforcement in the area. And option 9, looking to acquire additional right-of-way to provide more room for development over the coming years. So the recommendation by staff at this point would be option 1A, which would be essentially extending the one-way as it exists at the top end of College Street right now, right down to Waterloo. It does create that pedestrian priority area. It reduces the conflicting vehicle movements. It will have an impact on residents on the street, but through education and proper signage, we'll be able to hopefully accomplish that without incident, and it is relatively low to implement. So I'll turn it back to council for questions.
Thanks, Director Grant. Thanks to your team for, I think, what is a very thorough and thoughtful exploration and report that you prepared here. I greatly appreciate your team's work in workshopping and presenting some, I think, good options around this. Council questions for Director Grant at this time? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. In the 2028-2029 plan, it references that there would be a sidewalk put in at that time. I do believe, if I understood the report right, but there wouldn't be a plan to make it just one way. So I'm just wondering if you could just clarify with that. Were you going to be taking more of the left-hand side of some of the property that's there with the right-of-way to be able to put a sidewalk in and keep it bi-directional?
Sure. So with CIP projects, when we're in the kind of the 5-year out phase of budgeting or estimating for them, we're not looking at site-specific constraints like we would have here. Kind of recognizing that we're going in there, we got a big project which is going to remove all the inherent characteristics of that street, and we'll have the opportunity to also reconstruct them how we want. So in that project, what we kind of foreseen is that the boundary like you see described in that photo with the red lines, we have full opportunity to use that. We don't have the limitations of the street being, right now the street is not parallel with the property boundary, so there's wider right-of-way on one side at the bottom than what's at the top. There's also asphalt gutter, which would be removed. So having the opportunity in that CIP project to go in and start basically at the left side and work towards the right side to fit all of the different features of the street in is a potential. What would be a takeaway from that is that at the same time we're impacting the residents' yard. So if there is utility poles on one side, we can incorporate that. If there's retaining walls, we can incorporate that and adjust it. Versus right now, to try to implement a sidewalk on that street you don't have the same space at the top and the bottom, which is the biggest kind of restriction. So I guess thinking about if we do proceed with a one-way, we would look to evaluate that again at the CIP project time to say, do we want to maintain that? If we do want to maintain it as a one-way street, then we can remove one laneway that we have to rehabilitate after the project's done. So it's a lower operating cost, it's a lower capital cost to some degree. And if it's without compromise to the residents' movements, then maybe it is a positive for everyone.
Director Grant, I know the portion that would be sort of out of town, owned by the province, it's currently ripped up to accommodate the, or as part of the service extension project. I'm assuming the expectation from the province is that's returned to what its previous state was, with a single one-way southbound roadway with an asphalt sidewalk and a small kind of park lawn between the two?
Yes, that's correct. Rehabilitation will be to pre-existing conditions, which is the one-way street and the asphalt sidewalk.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions, council? Questions on the report? Okay. Thank you, Director Grant. Council, what do we want to do with this one? Go ahead.
I'd like to move that council direct staff to proceed with modifying College Street in Liverpool to become a southbound one-way street.
Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor Merrill. I'll let you speak to it first as the mover.
I have received many concerns about College Street, specifically really I think in the last year they've ramped up a lot more. When I first got elected in 2020, there were concerns brought up just about that area with development increasing and just the lack of infrastructure with sidewalks and things. So it's no surprise that this has continued to build, and as that area continues to develop and attractions come in that area, like the new track at the high school, that has people, flocking to it as well, which is lovely. It's a great space. I think we just have to look at what makes sense, and I'm sure that, it'll be a nuisance for some folks who are used to being able to go up and down that street, who live on that specifically. But I think that this makes sense to try this because we, of course, as Director Grant said, we do know that there are potentially some other options in 2028, 2029. But this is a way that pedestrian safety could improve really fairly quickly with next to no cost, some signage and some paint for lines. I am happy to see in the report that it does reference that lines, I believe, would be painted for pedestrians, so it's obvious where they would be walking. So I think this makes sense. The only thing that I would ask is that, like some of our other capital projects, that the residents in that area be notified just with what to expect, some kind of engagement around that so that they're aware, they're not, surprised when they see signs go up and things like that. Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak to it? Anything further? My only thought in reading the report, and I think the recommendation makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate the fact that we had two residents of College come to council this morning in support of the recommended direction around this. I just don't know if it wouldn't make sense to engage with some of the impacted parties, like the I guess SSRCE and administrators of the school and the bus garage, the YMCA, and then the impacted residents, just to capture any feedback that we should be considering prior to making this decision. I mean, That said, we could reverse course pretty easily on this, and clearly, and we're talking about this being a temporary solution, and perhaps a different solution would come down the pipeline once we get to the point where we're actually looking at making a more significant alteration. I'm happy to support the motion put forward. That was my initial kind of. In reading the staff report, my reaction was that it would be interesting to hear from a broader, to engage a broader group of impacted parties around and workshop the ideas presented and some of the options presented in this report. But anyway, further discussion before I ask the question? Go ahead.
I think in further to that comment, I think this is the only thing that makes sense to improve safety unless we're looking at moving projects up, and I don't think that we are with what we have to commit to with our infrastructure for water. But I think if we engage those residents in that area and extend the invitation to, you know, the high school and the daycare, we've had these little, you know, resident impact meetings before just so we can hear from them, hear their concerns before, you know, it's initiated, just so, mostly more so for awareness. I would just say, as a counselor for that area, I've heard many times from the daycare that they don't have a safe pathway to walk, you know, down to the part of town. We've seen them before on Shore Road, and there's no shoulder of the road there really at all.
No.
So I think that this does make sense. I just think if we can, you know, extend that invitation and engage with them so they just know what to expect and we're not relying on them finding out from a motion of council or a social media post, I think that's helpful.
Yep. I agree. And I do think that this is, as far as I can understand it, the most cost-effective and best solution to because we do know that is a serious concern with the high school, the daycare, in the new field up there. There's a lot of we need safe, active transportation corridors for pedestrians and non-motorists to get up and down the hill. Okay, I'll ask the question then. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, Director Grant. You're up for 7.2, Q1 Capital Projects Progress Update. Take it away.
Thank you. So brief update for council on progress to date of the capital investment plan so far this year on each project. So the background in the project just establishes the project lines, what they are, what the outcomes of those projects are as they were presented in the capital investment plan deliberations. And then fast forward, and I guess down to options, so providing council with the option to receive the report, along with some details of where the projects are. Generally speaking, most of the projects are moving along fairly well. They're on track, and summarized in the table towards the end of the staff report. This was prepared roughly as of 2 weeks ago, so there has been some movement on some of the challenging ones. Equipment procurement is in progress, underway. Good feedback on a lot of those. Mount Pleasant is moving along, as we know, on track to finish up by the end of the fiscal year. Wastewater lift stations, as we probably realize driving through town, is underway currently. The transmission main, we're waiting on the RAB for feedback on our most recent submission for that, which impacts both that one and the Main Street portion of the project. Queens Place Drive extension, also known as Dogwood Lane, is currently underway. We're working with the developer of the long-term care facility there for that construction. Waterloo is expected to start beginning in July, wrapping up by the end of the calendar year. Other projects involving the wastewater treatment facilities, the system assessment plan, report implementation plans. We're currently working with consultants. We got some RFQs and RFPs out right now for work that impacts those. An additional project of the Millbrook Flume will start next month. The accessible washroom will be back, myself or Patrick, perhaps the end of this month with a report for staff for council, to consider some options. Gorham Planner's underway currently. Did run into some unexpected conditions underground, which we're working through right now, but still on track to hopefully finish up by or before privateer day starts. Renovations at the library are ongoing. The old burial ground wall, we're working on a solution for that. The sidewalk on White Point Road is in progress. Our project management firm had their bidders meeting yesterday there with a turnout of one contractor. It wasn't a mandatory meeting, so that's kind of concerning, but we'll see what the results are when it closes in 2 weeks. The pool is on track to be handed over on July 3rd. Moving through Town Hall Arts and Cultural Center, so we have the year one. We've had some engagement with the tenant there. We'll be meeting with the architect on Thursday this week to discuss that. Municipal Services building heat pumps will begin in July, we expect. Rural fire suppression is currently underway with the Director of Protective Services. 2 projects at Queen's Place are initiating or in progress. Work at the C&D at the landfill facility is underway with design work. The site improvements is dependent on that one first. And the previous projects from last year, the HVAC, were at substantial completion now, just waiting for handover. And the replacement salt truck is due to be delivered end of next week. And just to describe the table as we prepared it for council, so there's a lot of information to consider with the projects. There's a lot of irons in the fire with each one. So what we've done to try to help summarize is give you kind of a status of where they're at, whether they're started, not started, if they're in progress, if they're starting to pick up speed, when we plan on starting them or when we did start them. The next column over would be representative of work done by staff. Contracted activities would be work done by our contractors. External dependent activities would be external dependencies, whether it's permitting from the province, regulatory appeals board. In some instances, we're impacted by developers in the area doing work that hold us up. And then generally where the timeline sits, so whether it's on track, we expect it to finish within the fiscal year by the proposed deadline. And then, with milestones, looking at what's kind of the next big item that's going to happen that's going to change the progress of that project and when we expect it to happen. So that was a lot of information. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Director Grant. Councilor Merrill?
Good morning. I'm just wondering, you said the start date for the Waterloo East final phase is July? Is that what you said?
Yep, so the most recent information we got from the contractors that they'd be on site in July, planning to be completed by the end of December.
So this road will not get paved? I'm presuming they can't do paving in December.
No, the expectation is that it will be complete 100% by December right now by the contractor, including asphalt.
I just have another question. What about the accessible parking upgrades to Queen's Place?
Yeah, so they're not a CIP project, they're the operating budget, but they are being planned right now. I think last I understood is that work would start in July on them following the Gorham walkway plan are being completed.
And I just have one more question. What about the wall over there at Queen's Place? I know council approved that many, many months ago, so I'm just wondering what's taking place there.
Yeah, that was approved in the operating budget as well, and we're meeting with the architect on Thursday to understand next steps of that with hopeful completion by the end of October on the work.
Thank you, Director Grant. I have a few questions. So just for my knowledge, when we put a number like, we'll just start with the first one here, equipment, 27-08. What does the second number mean?
It's just a sequence of numbers through each year. So 27 would be the year that it was added to the CIP or added to the draft CIP, and then it'd be the 8th project in that year. It's just a serial number for us to reference quickly back to each project.
Okay, so I'm just going to follow through here. 24-08, MPSE, which is the Water Transmission Extension Phase 5, I believe. And that's the upgrade to Roy Turner. I see that is delayed. Do we know why it's delayed and when we can think we can start on that?
Yep. And so work by staff did begin in May of 2024, and for 2 years we've been working with the Regulatory Appeals Board to get the permitting that's required for capital spending above $250,000. To this day, we've not been successful. We submitted the most recent application, I believe it was early May of this year. We've checked for updates and we haven't received a response from the board yet, but that's due to be received any time at this point.
Okay, so Queens Place Drive Services Extension 25-03, which expands serviceable boundary on Queens Place Drive to provide municipal infrastructure. Can you explain to me, or where's the extension and what's the purpose of the extension? A little better than reading it?
So what I understand is this was an agreement between council and the developer of the long-term care facility. So council agreed through land transaction to provide a 67-meter extension to the street, which included water, sewer, storm provisions, sidewalks through their driveways. So taking that cul-de-sac as it exists at Queens Place Drive right now, where it meets Old Cobb's Barn Road, and essentially translating that northeast 67 meters.
Okay. Next question is 25-08, Main Street, Roy Turner to Mersey. It says West Street, Milton, but then it says to Mersey Place Court. I live in that area, but I'm not familiar. Where is Mersey Place Court?
Mersey Place Court would be the development that's the last within the, I guess, the former town limits, so just past the Cowie Well, heading north would be the end of the Liverpool community boundary where it turns to Milton. So it's West Street in Milton, meets Main Street in Liverpool, from Roy Turner Road to Mersey Place Court.
So you're heading northwest, so you're going to go towards, when you get down to the bottom of Roy Turner, you're going to go left? Is that's what I'm catching here? You're going left?
We're going to head from Roy Turner Road to the Cowie Well, essentially.
Okay. And that also is delayed for the same reason?
That's the exact same as the project on Roy Turner Road, so they're both dependent on that approval from the RAB to move forward.
Any other questions, Council? Councilor Fancy?
Yes, 2518, the sidewalk from Millard to Harley Humphrey, Section 1, because I know we put that into different sections. I don't know if this is a place to ask the question, but we were going to look at if that some of that monies could be, or grants could be used for up here to the wick wire down to here. Is that something being considered or not, or has it been asked?
Yeah, so I think it was March 10th, we were here, regular council, and presented that approval from Grid. We then went back to, I think council's direction was to utilize the funding in an alternative location, so it was proposed by staff to be used for the pool project, Waterloo, and I believe that one, yeah, it escapes me a little bit which one, the sidewalk for sure. We have not heard back yet. We checked in last week for an update from the province with no response. We've also asked them to enhance their support of the project with these other ones and see if there's some additional funding to be had.
Any other questions, Council? Like, this is great. It's great to get an update on where the capital projects are kind of mid-year. Your intent would be to bring this back quarterly, is that right, Director Grant? Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, appreciate it. Look for a motion to receive the report titled Q1 Capital Projects Update for Information. Moved by Councillor Carver. Is there a second? Seconded by Councillor Merrill. Any debate or discussion? All those in favor? Thank you, Director Grant. Motion carried. Okay, next up is Pine Grove Park accessibility upgrades. Looks like we have Sal. It's going to give us an update on this one. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm here this morning to seek council approval to proceed with preliminary permitting and contracting work that will reduce barriers for parking, walking and rolling, and fishing at Pine Grove Park. In fall 2025, staff were approached by the Nova Scotia Guide Service, represented by Vinyl Smith, with the idea of including an accessible fishing area in Pine Grove Park. At that time, ideas were discussed, including potential for accessible parking and the installation of an accessible fishing dock. In February 2026, staff, including the previous Community Economic Development Officer, conducted a site visit and drafted a rendering of the concept using available aerial imagery, which was included in the agenda of this package. To note, this is just a preliminary rendering to visualize the ideas that were brought forward by community members and does not reflect the potential realities of the project once staff further explore permitting requirements. Through further discussions with the Guide Service, community groups, and the Accessibility Committee, this generated much excitement. Staff considered a phased approach so that the project could expand to include a permanent accessible washroom, a picnic shelter or seating, as well as initiatives from community groups such as bird boxes or a butterfly garden. To be clear, phase 1 would be about making access possible to the area with a vehicle, to a small parking area, and then down to the water with most mobility aids, and putting in place a portable accessible washroom for the 2026 season. The total cost estimate for phase 1, based on the work proposed in this report, is estimated to be between $16,000 and $20,000, based on preliminary quotes by a contractor. I'm proposing that any costs for phase 1 not covered by a partnership with the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture would be covered by the Region of Queens Accessibility Reserve, which currently holds $70,000 and has funded 2 small projects since it was established. Phase 2 then would see the addition of the accessible dock, a permanent barrier-free washroom, a picnic shelter or seating, as well as the aforementioned initiatives from community groups like bird boxes and plants. Provincial accessibility grant funding and other funding partnerships could be explored for phase 2 and be considered in 2027, 2028. Several community groups and partners have expressed interest in this project. Jason LeBlanc, Director of Inland Fisheries at the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture, has funds available to support the barrier-free waterfront access for fishing, and they have an anticipated contribution of up to $12,000 for the first phase. Ducks Unlimited has also expressed interest in the work, and they've worked with the municipality previously in this park, so they have a vested interest in seeing the park used by the public. And local community member Chris Clark has expressed interest in supporting beautification and ecological projects, connecting us with other groups who would do the flower planting and the bird boxes. Adding a barrier-free area to Pine Grove Park has been a priority for the accessibility plan since 2020 and aligns with Municipal Policy 87 on recreation for all, as well as several of the Council's 2026 to 2029 strategic priority goals. Furthermore, at the May 25th, 2026 Accessibility Committee meeting, committee members approved a motion of support for the Pine Grove Accessibility Project and recommend that the presentation and proposal be brought forward to Council for further consideration. Hence why I'm here today. Working collaboratively with community and provincial partners to create a barrier-free waterfront access in Pine Grove Park will allow more residents and visitors to enjoy this community park and participate in the long-standing tradition of fishing in the area. Given this, and given the anticipated financial support from Inland Fisheries, the available funds in the Accessibility Reserve, the project vision support from the Nova Scotia Guide Service, the interest from community members, and the support of the Accessibility Committee, I recommend that Council for the Region of Queens Municipality direct staff to proceed with implementing phase 1 of the proposed accessibility upgrades at Pine Grove Park in partnership with the Nova Scotia Guide Service, and that Council for the Region of Queens Municipality direct staff to further investigate costs, funding opportunities, and implications of phase 2, and refer considerations for phase 2 to the 2027-28 budget deliberations.
Great, thanks very much for your report this morning. Any questions on this one, Council? Councilor Carver?
Hi, good morning. Great job. I think it'll be beautiful. I just would like to know, I think I know where it is that is going to go. So when you're coming in from Milton, it's just before the park entrance?
Yeah.
Is that where it is? Okay. I don't remember a ball field ever being there, but anyway.
That's correct. I've been told it used to be a ballpark maybe in that area.
Any other questions? There is an access there, but it's not. Yeah, like there's like a staff access there. Yeah. Councilor Merrill?
Hi. I'm sorry I was sick and missed the last meeting, which was a discussion on this. But I've been on the accessibility committee for quite a few years, and we're always looking at ways to make Pine Grove accessible. And I did go on and look at the Antigonish Rivers Association project, so I'm hoping we can do something similar to that. It looks beautiful, and I'm all in favor of it. Thank you.
Great. Yes, we anticipate connecting with the Antigonish River Association to see how they conducted their project.
Any further questions, Councillor Wenzel?
Would you like a motion?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. That's true. So, yeah, it just, if you want to move the recommended motion, I would suggest investigate costs, funding opportunities, and implications of phase 2. And I appreciate the fact that we are exploring and leveraging funding opportunities from other partner organizations and other orders of government. It's great.
Okay. So, at the end of phase 2, the second part of the motion then.
That's right. Investigate costs, funding opportunities, and implications of phase 2.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll try this. I'll move that the Council of the Region of Queens Municipality direct staff to proceed with implementing phase 1 on the proposed accessibility upgrades at Pine Grove Park in partnership with the Nova Scotia Guide Service, and that Council of the Region of Queens direct staff to further investigate costs and implications. Is this where you'd like that to add? Costs, yeah, investigate costs, funding possibilities, partnerships, and implications of phase 2, and refer consideration of phase 2 to the 2027-2028 budget deliberations.
Thank you, Councillor Wenzel. Is there a second to the motion? Councillor Merrill. Further discussion this time? Councillor Fancy?
I'd just like to add to we're looking at phase 1 and phase 2, but I wondered if something else was considered is I know initially where we were going to do is coming through the parking lot and then going down over the hill. That hill is really steep. Is there still consideration of putting some roadway around that so people can get down, with wheelchairs and things like that coming from the main parking lot?
Are you saying from the existing parking lot or from this proposed?
From the existing parking lot, because that's so steep when you're going down over. There was talk before of going, make a roadway around going over towards that old building and then bringing it down so it becomes more gradual.
Not at this time. That's not a consideration under the current proposal.
So I can speak to that. The decision was instead to install an accessible parking lot in an area of Pine Grove, which is sort of level grade, so as to get around the issue of how steep the grade associated with the existing parking lot, to install a secondary parking lot that would make for more appropriate and easier accessible access to the pond. Was the idea.
I understand that, but also too, that still is an issue for people going down with the wheelchair or anything coming into the park, because going down is so steep, and
right.
it's making a roadway around so people can get down easier. When we're talking about accessibility, I'm just wondering if that's a consideration. Maybe further down the road.
Oh, I see what you mean, yeah. Yeah, you mean broader accessibility improvements for Pine Grove, not associated with access to fishing. Right, okay. Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. I am going to call for a brief recess and reconvene at 10:20 before we move on to this next staff report. All right, folks, let's get rolling here. So the next item on the agenda is joining a regional emergency management organization, and we are joined by our Director of Protective Services, Angela Hanhofer, who's going to provide us with a report this morning. Take it away, Angela.
Thank you. So this is a continuation of the workshop that I presented to council, and the direction was to have staff create a decision framework so that we can decide which REMO that we would be joining. To recollect, we've got 3 options that are available that the province has provided us. So the 3 are Annapolis County, Shelburne County, and Lunenburg County. It has to be a neighboring municipality within the framework of the Department of Emergency Management standards. Staff are recommending to council that we begin discussions with Lunenburg County Regional Emergency Management Organization and bring back some future agreements, the governance structure, the cost details, and implementation. The recommendation for Lunenburg REMO really comes down to the operational capacity. Of the 3, it's the most mature program. Full-time staff within the emergency management side specifically is 2.33. And then each municipality has a staff person that's called an assistant emergency coordinator. And each unit has at least 1, and that makes up 10% of their time. So there's staff elsewhere within the municipality. Some units have 2, but there's a minimum agreement of 1. And then in addition, we also have 60 trained staff that can help for an emergency. What was discovered in the floods was when we have multi-day, multi-shift responses, we definitely need more staff. So from that, we started to engage more staff. That kind of depth really takes years to invest, and it really helps to provide sustained, long emergency responses that we could be expecting. From an existing relationships perspective, Region of Queens already has relationships with Lunenburg municipalities. They have the Mayor and Wardens and CAO working group. We have shared building services, Region 6, and we also have a memorandum of understanding for emergency management as well. So that would obviously help make the transition smoother. From the financial perspective, the current estimated cost is included in the chart for each of the options, and council has already approved a placeholder of $35,000 for the half year for this budget period. And there also is a 3-year provincial grant that the province is providing. It's not a whole lot, but it definitely helps lean into some of the transition costs that are going to be expected from a legal as well as other requirements to meet those standards. I've also created a bit of a map for proximity. This was one of the questions that came up during the council workshop. And so it's just to show the location of the coordination centers based on a variety of different locations within Queens itself. So it's just the geographical context for that. So the recommendation is based on which structure staff believe currently provides the strongest operational readiness, the staff capacity, and governance maturity for long-term sustainability along with Queens. So if council supports the recommendation, staff will begin discussions with Lunenburg REMO, and then we'll start drafting the intermunicipal services agreement, cost-sharing model, the governance, and implementation strategy. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Director Hanhofer. This is a really thoughtful and well-constructed report. I greatly appreciate the summary comparison matrix as well as the implementation flow chart. Just really great to help us make good informed decisions. Council, questions on the report or the recommendation being brought forward here? Any questions? Councilor Carver?
All right, thank you. I agree with going with Lunenburg. It makes sense. We already have the shared, services and all that stuff. And also, I'd just like to know what is the peacetime emergency agreement that we have with Annapolis?
It's a very old, it's virtually the mutual aid understanding. Mutual aid and memorandum of understanding. It's just that's what they used to be called a long time ago. Even though it was dated 2006, it really is a holdover of the old language, but it's a shared services agreement in an emergency that we can tap into other municipalities.
And also, what is Tate Run, where it says the G and Tate Run?
On the map. So I was trying to pull out the top end of the lakes and then kind of in Malaga and Laval. So the G and H on the chart is I just noticed it actually as I was rereading it. I missed the H. It's actually overlapping. So they're the highest point within the area because that was one of the discussions that we had as to are we going to be covering off another place. So in the box, it's G on the map.
Tate Run is between Malaga and Hog Lake. There's a large falls there that's where it is.
Any other questions? Councilor Merrill?
It says in the report, the Regional Emergency Readiness Grant, which provides up to $20,000. What determines the amount a municipality receives?
So under the standards, each municipality within a REMO is allowed for $20,000, and if we apply for it, we get the grant. So we've already missed year one, so this would technically be year two. We would apply for the $20,000, and it's meant to implement the standards, join a REMO, and then if we chose Lunenburg as an example, they've already put in their grant for the 5 municipal units, so it's $100,000. We would be adding, the $20,000 for here. It's a 75-25 split for this year. Next year, it's 50-50, and then the final year, year 4, is 75% on the municipality, 25% on the province.
I see in the implementation flow chart that there's opportunities that the existing municipal councils, the 5 that are currently part of the REMO, have the opportunity kind of to accept us at the table or not. What happens if they don't, and what criteria, under what circumstances could they sort of opt out from allowing us at the table? Realizing we only have 3 to choose from, what are the criteria through which councils can either agree to accept us or deny the request or the expression of interest to join the REMO?
Great question. And I think that really comes down to all of the councils. So what the process would be is we would put a recommendation to Lunenburg REMO, so the advisory committee, which is made up of the elected officials of the 5 municipal units. We would put the request into them. The request then goes out to their broader council, so the councils would discuss, and then the information from those 5 councils would come back to REMO from the advisory perspective. I don't know, honestly, it would be the decision of councils. However, in working with them in the past, they have agreed on many things. There has been times where there has had to be discussions of things, but they've always worked through their situation. And I think in the end, if they were to choose no, we would then have to, either try to work within what is it that they're looking for, but that's going to all be defined within the intermunicipal services agreement. And then if it truly was a no, we would have to choose another one, or we could ask the province to intervene. I'm not anticipating that. We have had some preliminary discussions now, only obviously at the CAO level. I think, in working with them in the past, that there is also some willingness to want to work with Queens as well. And we already have that agreement. You work together on the mayor, wardens, and CAO table. Region 6, we've got the building services. So I don't think that that's a far stretch, but that's just my personal opinion on that.
Okay, yeah, I don't either, but I was just curious. What's the typical timeline from expression of interest to signing an intermunicipal service agreement, typically realizing that there's some, contingencies in there, stuff that's outside of our control.
Yeah, so if we're looking at Lunenburg Remo specifically, their advisory committee meets every 2 months. I was just actually at MODL on Friday, and so the deputy CAO had indicated their next meeting is July 29th. So we would have the letter to them before that, have it be discussed, and then goes back. Because it has to go back to the 5 councils, it does take some time. I'm not going to say that it doesn't. One of the good things is when I was there just recently, we actually just reviewed the intermunicipal services agreement. So from the 5 units perspective, it's not like we have to look at anything significant to start from scratch. So I would anticipate in this case, it'll probably, it'll be a few months, but I would anticipate by late fall, early winter, we should probably be in that, definitely within this fiscal period. It'll just be a matter of, all of the councils, once they get together, do they want to change the look and feel of the intermunicipal services agreement, or do we just kind of insert Queens to add as a 6th unit? And that's where each individual council would have input.
Any other questions, council? So your recommendation is the Lunenburg County Remo, and I mean, there's very good sort of business case for it. Obviously, the drawback is it being the most costly option. What's your sense of why is it because of the maturity of the Remo in Lunenburg County, and that there's an expectation, or that it's foreseeable that the costs would rise in Annapolis County and in Shelburne County as the maturity of those organizations takes hold and advances? Or I'm just trying to get a sense of why there is. So I mean, Annapolis County and Lunenburg County are quite similar, but the cost of joining Shelburne County is considerably less. I'm just trying to get a sense of what's the cost drivers that makes it so different, the Lunenburg County Remo versus the Shelburne County Remo?
For Shelburne, looking at that number, I don't know if the staff salary is included in it, because a staff salary is more than $45,000. So I suspect that the staff salary, and I don't know because I haven't seen the full budget, I suspect that that's outside of the actual cost, whereas the 2.33% staff for Lunenburg Remo is embedded right into the cost. They've got a very full-fledged training program for all staff, as well as their community partners. There's things like communications, hiring some consultants if needed for moving some of those things forward from a communications perspective, as well as other fully embedded education and outreach to residents as well. So I think it's just the maturity of it, as well as knowing that there's 2.33 full-time staff in it, including some contingencies. There is definitely contingencies for emergencies already embedded into that budget as well, so that if we have an emergency, or when we have an emergency, there's less less need on the fly for each of the councils to come back. So I think that it's that, plus it is just a much more mature program. Unless, I think in my experience, there's only been 1 or 2 times over the 7 years that we had to go back to council throughout the period, and that was to implement things following after action reports, or that when I talk council, the advisory came back to request something new. So it's a pretty solid budget of what they're offering, and it's all of the staff time included, as well as training and exercising and outreach.
Thank you. Council, any other questions? Councilor Fancy?
The one thing that really stands out to me is the training and exercise program. It doesn't seem to be like with Shelburne, it's just as needed, and others more as needed. So we're going to have a lot better programming, a lot better trained staff.
That was, and keep in mind, like Shelburne's right now, they just became a Remo, so they'll be getting to that point, as Annapolis will also be growing. For Lunenburg, I can comment that in 2023, following the floods, it was already an after-action item after 2019 and Hurricane Dorian, but after the floods, we really identified that we needed more staff. We were overwhelmed with the amount of need and time hours that we put in. And so that was one of the very clear recommendations that we presented to council and to the CAOs. And from there, we rolled out a very aggressive training program, and it's very well embedded. And that's why there's 57 staff that are trained for it. They did hire a consultant to take the incident command training, which is much more for first responders, and we reduced it down to a municipal level of what staff need, and that's being rolled out this year. In fact, one of our staff is going tomorrow to one of the sessions, and we share it, not just within the Remo municipalities, but to our fellow municipalities, because it does take a lot to have staff trained. So however we can lean into other municipalities, we do that. But it was definitely one of the recommendations following the flood, and there's a great need to have staff trained so that they feel that they understand what they're going to be doing in an emergency. We don't need them often, but when we need them, we want to make sure that they're trained, give them the confidence.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing that, is there a motion?
I move that council direct staff to initiate discussions with the Lunenburg County Regional Emergency Management Organization, to the Lunenburg REMO, regarding the Region of Queens Municipality joining the existing regional emergency management structure, and that staff be directed to work with Lunenburg REMO to return to a future regular meeting of council with a report outlining the proposed intermunicipal service agreement, governance structure, financial implications, and implementation requirements associated with the Region of Queens Municipality joining Lunenburg REMO, and that council directs staff to proceed with application to the Nova Scotia Department of Emergency Management 2026-2027 Regional Emergency Readiness Grant Program in collaboration with the preferred REMO partner.
Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Councilor Fancy. Debate? Any debate on this one? Further discussion before I ask the question? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And then Director Hannaford, this one is yours as well, the update on the Rural Water Initiative. Take it away.
Thank you. I'm going to do this in two parts. One is specific to the staff report, and one is a slight update of something that I just recently learned. So this is a brief follow-up for the water conservation and storage program from the May 12th meeting. As I was going through the implementation and discussions with suppliers, I've had some due diligence that I think needs to be brought to the council's attention. Originally, we were hoping that the large totes would be considered food grade. However, after first use, they're considered contaminated, and knowing that residents have low water and it might be difficult to sanitize, and taking the risk off of the municipality, I'm recommending that it's not considered a potable water, that it's considered a non-potable water. So the whole program then would become a non-potable program. So we would still have the rain barrels, we would still have the totes, but the totes were originally considered to be food grade. And so if we were to go that route, it would also be a reduction of cost, because a used tote is less than a new tote. But we just can't guarantee the cleaning and sanitization following the first use, and so that would be the intent of it. And so it's not really changing the intent of the program. It's just being able to recognize that the majority of water being used by residents is generally non-potable. It's for cleaning, dishes, flushing toilets, laundry, and things. And then residents who require potable water would still need to purchase that themselves and obtain it through approved drinking sources. So that's the first part of it. I don't know if you need the motion.
So any questions there, just as a pause, any questions on sort of classifying the water totes as non-potable? Go ahead, Councillor Fancy.
So I guess with reclassification, it just takes the onus off of us and the responsibility. They can do whatever they want to with it, but but we have to say that it's not potable.
That's correct. We want to just ensure, and our messaging will go out, that it's going to be non-potable. What residents do with it after that is still up to them, just like it would have been the original draft. However, we just want to make that clarity so that there isn't any expectation on the municipality that we've provided anything with the understanding that it was potable.
Any other questions on that one? Okay, continue.
Thank you. So as I've also been going through, I'll talk about the rain barrel on this one. I was actually able to secure some funding, or sorry, not secure funding, secure the proposal from the vendor, and it will actually include delivery. So originally I had proposed 3 tiers, one which was the low income, the second was if we were delivering it, and the third if somebody was picking up. I've been able to secure delivery for the whole region. Originally it was just for Milton, Brooklyn, and Liverpool area. And so my recommendation based on that is to actually only do 2 tiers, and it would almost work out to be a 70%, and then on the resident it would be 30%, which is, I'm proposing $25. So I'm taking that third tier away, if council was to agree with that.
Questions on that one? That's great. I mean, that's great update in terms of the ability to deliver everywhere in Queens County.
Yeah, it would be home delivery for all of them. I'm still working on the totes, hoping to have some information on that in the coming days, but specifically to the rain barrel program.
So I just see in the recommended motion that we've been provided as part of the staff report, it's just limited to clarifying the language around the water totes, not the second piece. I'm not sure if you have a recommended motion associated with the second piece. Or?
So the water totes would be for non-potable. That's what's in the motion.
Right.
And then the other would be, unless council has any concerns, of just reducing it to the 2 tiers.
Okay. Good. Any questions on that piece? Any questions, council? No? Okay. Is there a motion? Councilor Merrill?
I move the council approve an amendment to the Water Conservation and Storage Program pilot under the Rural Water Initiative to clarify that water totes are intended for non-potable water storage and use only.
Second of the motion? Seconded by Councilor Fancy. Any further debate or discussion on it? Call the question. All those in favor? That's carried, yeah. And then perhaps a motion for the amendment with respect to just moving to the 2 tiers. I'm sure, do you have some language that we could consider on that?
Sure, that council approve the rain barrel program with 2 tiers, the low income at no cost to the resident, the $25 for residents for a rain barrel, including home delivery.
Madam Clerk, you okay with that? Council, is that clear? Is there somebody who'd like to move the motion as recommended by staff? Councilor Mera, so moved. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor Carver. Further discussion? Appreciate it. It's a good piece of program. Yeah, thanks very much. All those in favor? That motion's carried. Thanks very much. Okay, 7.6 is on the bursaries now. Municipal Clerk is absent today. Kate, are you taking that one? Okay, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is seeking council's approval of the 2026 bursary recipients as recommended by the Bursary Selection Committee. The committee reviewed applications from graduating students at Liverpool Regional High School, North Queens Community School, and Queens Adult High School, and selected the recipients who best met the established criteria for each award. For the Municipal Bursary Awards, the recommended recipients are Daniel Loiser from Liverpool Regional High School, Zoe Wombolt from North Queens Community School, and Rebecca Langell from Queens Adult High School. The committee has also recommended Abigail Grant for the Gertrude Ford Newcomb Achievement Award, Anderson Folk for the Vera Harlow Gordon Award, Cassidy Lowe for the J. Roy Gordon Award, and Sierra McLeod and Rebecca Langell for the E.H. Ted Harlow Achievement Awards. The total value of the awards is $11,500, which is fully provided for through the approved operating budget and private grant funds established for this purpose. Staff is recommending that council approve the bursary recipients as presented in the report so that the schools and students can be notified prior to graduation ceremonies.
Thank you. Ms. Wong, any questions? Any questions, council? Is there a motion? Go ahead, Councilor Carver.
Okay, that the Council for the Region of Queens Municipality approve the awarding of the 2026 bursary funds to the students recommended by the Bursary Selection Committee.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Wenzel. Any discussion? Councilor Carver and I make up the committee, and I just want to thank staff for some alterations to the approach, with respect to some barrier removal. In the past, had been a little more stringent about the modality and the way in which applications came in. This year, we sort of cast a broader net and removed some of those barriers, which I thought was really great to see. And we got lots of great applications. Anything further before I call the question? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, Ms. Wong. So we have 7.7 is the council implementation report. Also recognizing that our municipal clerk is absent today, but I'll open it up to council to flag any questions that you have with respect to the contents of the council implementation report, and those could be passed along to the municipal clerk for action after the meeting. Go ahead, Councilor Carver.
I was just wondering if Sammy Cochran opened up his business at the Beach Meadows yet?
Okay. My understanding is it's not open yet. The final outfitting of the site is being completed, I believe, this week. I'm not sure. Do you want to speak to it just quickly? Deputy CAO Hurdle.
Yes, through you, Your Worship. That's correct. That outfitting of the site is currently underway. Our Community Economic Development Officer, Lynette, has been working closely with Mr. Cochran on that and making sure that the site is ready to go, and we'll get him in there as quickly as possible. Yeah.
Thank you,
Other
Deputy
one
CAO
for-
Hurdle.
Probably for you. I was just wondering about the community wells. Have you been able to determine any potential community?
That is a work in progress right now with staff. So priority one was to get the rain barrel and the water tote program kind of out the door, where that is the most effective quick response program. Once that is done, staff will be picking up working on both community wells and identifying either locations that the region may want to make investments in or partnership opportunities. And running parallel with that, we also will have staff bringing back the bylaw related to the well loan program as well imminently.
The well loan program as well. Any other questions on the council implementation report? Okay, perhaps a motion to accept it for information. Moved by Councilor Mero, seconded by Councilor Wenzel. All those in favor? Accept it as information. All right, that brings us to, we have one bylaw, first reading of bylaw number 29 on the accommodation levy. Mr. Lane, I believe that one is your piece of work. Want to just give us an overview of this item, please? Good morning.
Certainly. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, councillors. Yes, so the report that you have in front of you is introducing the draft bylaw number 29 respecting collection of fees under an accommodation levy. This was for first reading. It has an amendment which was requested under the April 28th council meeting. I'll just remind you of the motion was that council for the region of Queens Municipality directs staff to explore the creation of a wrong one. Too many bits of paper now. There we are. The Council for Region of Queen's Municipality directs staff to enhance the compliance and enforcement functions for non-compliant operators within the bylaw. So Section 14 of this draft now explicitly allows for an inspector appointed by the Chief Administrative Officer to enter a business premises and inspect records for the purpose of determining compliance. I think the other motion, as I mentioned there at the April 28th meeting, was that Council for the Region of Queen's Municipality directs staff to explore the creation of a committee or group of accommodation operators and municipal representatives to recommend the use of revenue collected through the accommodation levy during its implementation. That hasn't been written into the bylaw, but certainly if this bylaw is adopted, then the terms of reference, the composition and structure of a committee like that would be developed. Those are the two changes that came from the April 28th meeting. If there, I guess, I can run through the bylaw again if anyone needs. Otherwise, I'll just be available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. Questions, Council? Questions on the amendments and updates to the proposed bylaw number 29, respecting collection of fees under accommodation levy? Any questions? Mr. Lane, I just have one question that I appreciate the sort of strengthening of Article 14 of the proposed bylaw here. The approach to have an inspector appointed by the CAO, the municipality CAO, is that aligned with what other jurisdictions are doing with respect to the accommodation levy?
Yes, it is. It follows sort of common practice that has been adopted in other comparable bylaws in Nova Scotia. Yes.
Thanks. Councillor Merrow, a question?
Under the registration of operator, I'm just wondering why our part is quite vague compared to other municipalities. When they're talking about the registration of an operator and a certificate, there's quite a bit to other municipalities, quite a bit to their bylaw, and I'm just wondering why we left all that part out about obtaining a certificate and having it in a prominent place in a business. Could you answer that, please?
Certainly. So there's two possible scenarios here. The first one is that all of the registration and certification requirements are already contained within the Provincial Short-Term Registration Rentals Registration Act. And so anything within this bylaw, unless it was substantially different to that, would be redundant. And so it's rather than redefining something which is already defined in provincial law, it's easier to rely on that as the policy and not duplicate it within our own bylaw. The other possibility is that some municipalities have adopted a separate registration system than the provincial one. That might be for their own internal purposes, for monitoring or looking at short-term registration rentals within a county. We don't have that registration system, certainly at the moment. The only thing that someone is required to do from a municipal point of view, when they're registering a short-term rental with the province, they have to provide a letter from the municipality of compliance, which really at the moment all that checks is that the zoning is appropriately zoned as a short-term rental. But those are the two possibilities within that, if that answers your question.
It does, but I'm just kind of wondering what kind of security or whatever customers have that's staying at Airbnbs, if they're taking the registration amount, or the levy amount, I should say, and remitting it. What kind of proof is there for customers that's staying at these venues?
There hasn't been any quality assurance system for accommodations in Nova Scotia for quite a long time. So basically, there is no, as part of the registration, it's not as though a municipal bylaw official needs to enter premises and check that things are up to code, or from a safety or quality point of view. That's not a requirement. That would be on individual municipalities to look at the moment.
Mr. Lane, just in regards to the comment Councillor Miro flagged, and you had said that they have to go through the province of Nova Scotia for the registration number. So to get that registration number, they have to prove first that they comply with the municipal bylaws. So they're not getting the registration number and then potentially missing these other key steps. They have to do all these to be able to get that number in the first place.
That's correct. Yeah, as part of the registration application to the province, they have to provide a letter of compliance. At the moment, that, as I say, that only relates to zoning from the municipality. Yes, that's part of the application.
Any other questions for Mr. Lane at this time? Any other questions, council? No? Is there a motion?
Looking to move to accept this as first reading.
Okay, Councillor Wenzel has moved to accept the first reading of bylaw number 29, accommodation levy, or introduce it. Is there a second to the motion? Councillor Carver? Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, I guess I'm just looking at the town of Bridgewater specifically, but when it says there, every operator must apply for and obtain the following. It references the registration number first. Then it goes on to say a letter of compliance for each place of business, providing accommodations, confirming that the accommodation complies with bylaws. So we know that they have to comply with that before they get the short-term rental number, registration number. But then it does go on to say, specifically when an operator changes their address, the name of their business, or the nature of the accommodation offered, they shall forthwith inform the town to amend the letter of compliance accordingly. Where an operator ceases to carry on or sells a business in respect of which a short-term rental registration number has been issued, the letter of compliance shall immediately be voided. And last, a letter of compliance granted under this bylaw is not transferable. So I'm just kind of wondering if we should be considering any of that in this specifically, I guess in the sense that if you own a short-term rental and you were to sell it, like how would the municipality know that it wasn't modified and then it no longer then met like the municipal bylaws or things like that? I'm just wondering if that's been on your radar at all, if you can comment on that, recognizing that maybe some of this might evolve with our land use planning, specifically around short-term rentals and such, but just, this could evolve. I think we have to obviously get it in place and maybe things need to be changed, but I'm just wondering if you can kind of speak to any of that, if council should be considering that before they put it out for first reading.
When considering this, as far as I understand, no provincial registration number is transferable, so a new operator would have to reapply, and so again, it's redundant really, because that the clauses that would govern something like that are already contained within provincial law. Yeah, so it would just be duplication.
Any further debate or discussion? I see that we've lost visual, but are we okay? Should the audio still part of the stream here? Should be? Okay. Any further debate or discussion on the first introduction of the accommodation levy for first reading at this time? Okay, I'll ask the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, Mr. Lane. Okay, no correspondence today, no reports from in camera. So I will give a brief mayor's report of the comings and goings since last council meeting. On May 27th, I had the opportunity to attend with some other folks from the region of Queens Municipality the Resiliency Scale Framework Training Master Course. And so a big thanks to the Social Regional Center for Education, Communities, Culture, Tourism, and Heritage, as well as the Queens Community Health Board for funding this training workshop, and for Public Health's Sarah Murphy for coordinating it and hosting the event. So the Resiliency Scale Framework is basically basically it introduces a common language for the various service providers who work to support people throughout Queens, and a lot of those service providers were present and participated in that training session, from a full range of kind of from health to education to social services. A good cross section of service providers were there, and I think that this is going to be really important as we make our way through the community wellness strategy for Queens to understand how we can best contribute to individual and community resilience, and then the region of Queens Municipality to determine how we best position ourselves within that broader community system. And so I think that this work is going to be instrumental. I think it planted the seed for some meaningful progress, and was just so it was anyway. It was a really it was an interesting day. It was really well received from the various service providers who were represented in the room, and kind of the next step is a bit of a coding exercise where the various service provider agencies and community-based organizations who are contributing to community wellness and building resilience in our community can identify what they contribute to the system. And then there's a kind of a mapping exercise where we'll be able to see which organizations are really removing those risk factors for folks versus the organizations who are adding, enabling, and productive supportive factors, and which organizations are really working to enhance people's resilience to navigate challenges in life. And so a lot of the stuff that we heard in the presentation from Sue on gender-based violence and social isolation, and how all those things connect with each other, this work is really going to enhance our understanding of how that's playing out in Queens, and then how we as a regional and local government can best position ourselves and make the smartest investment in terms of how we can best impact resilience and community well-being in Queens County. So again, thanks to Sarah Murphy specifically, and to all of the funding organizations for making that work possible. There's no cost to the municipality, and I think it's going to be it's going to be instrumental as we advance our approach to community wellness. And then the next day, on May 28th, I was joined by Deputy Mayor Charlton and Councillor Fancy and Councillor Wenzel, all on Main Street in downtown Liverpool, where the Brick had their ribbon cutting ceremony. So big congratulations to the Wilsons Group and to the Brick for opening their newest location here. And it's, I know the Deputy Mayor Charlton was shopping for her next sectional, placing an order right away. So it was a very successful ribbon cutting ceremony. And it's just exciting to see the amount of investment and energy on Main Street in Liverpool. June 2nd, Councillor Carver and I, who make up the Bursary Selection Committee, met to determine who the recipients are going to be of the various scholarships and bursary programs that are administered by the Region of Queens Municipality. And I just wanted to say congratulations to all the graduates and applicants. Whether you ultimately won a scholarship or not, your achievements are considerable, and it's exciting to see the aspirations and vision of some of the future of the youth throughout our community. It's always a really kind of fun exercise walking through those applications. And then lastly, on last Friday, June 5th, I spent the day in kind of the Maliga Lake, LaBelle area, and learning more about fire risks posed by dying and dead hemlock, issues with private road and bridge infrastructure, which hampers access to emergency vehicles, and also heard and saw resident concerns related to unpermitted and non-compliant lakeshore development, which we're working to determine more effective approaches to deal with as part of our interim review of the land use bylaw and municipal planning strategy. So thanks to Councillor Jenkins for ferrying us around throughout the area, and to the concerned residents who took their time to share and demonstrate their concerns with Councillor Jenkins and I. That concludes my mayor's report for today. Any questions? Anybody want to add anything else? Councillor Romero?
Nothing about your mayor's report, but we did miss 10.1.
Did we?
Yeah, which is the Astor letter.
I don't have it in my agenda package. Sorry. It was a late. Oh, that was from last. That was from the last meeting. Yeah. Yeah. The letter of support has been sent. The letter of support has been sent. So we're adding.
Sorry, thank
Yeah,
you.
that's all good. Anybody else have any shout out or anything that they want to highlight today? Go ahead, Councillor Jenkins.
I would just like to say how happy I am that as councillor for District 6, Greenfield, Mill Village and area, that I'm hearing so many good things about the new locations and whatnot that is happening on Main Street in Liverpool. It's been the first time in a long time that people have said that they like to go to Liverpool Main Street and visit the Channel or Main and Mersey and other places. So maybe Main Street is heading in the right direction, and that the people of Queens can enjoy Liverpool. So I just wanted to say that a little thank you to those business people getting involved on Main Street. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jenkins. And I know you and I also were discussing when we were driving around through the LaBelle area, a lot of positive feedback on better state of affairs at the Grey Box, the group, the collection sites that support private roads. And so thanks to staff also from contractors and council for holding firm and getting some traction on that as well. When we were driving around, most of those Grey Box sites were looking in pretty good state. So it's really great to see. Okay, that I believe concludes, unless Councillor Romero, unless you have any other business items that I'm not aware of. I believe that. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Just under council business, I guess. I'd just like to shout out and congratulate all the hard-fought gains by CUPE long-term care workers who apparently have a tentative agreement in place. So I just thought I'd have that shout out there for them.
Councillor Wenzel. All right, with that, I will conclude that I think that concludes the public portion of the meeting. So I'll look for a motion to move in camera at this time. Moved by Deputy Mayor Charlton, seconded by Councillor Carver. And we shall do that now. Thanks, folks.